What are we doing today, Ethan?
We are working on this truck. That's what we're doing.
Well, we're making some progress. So this whole front clip, when you tilt it up, it kind of shifts from left to right. So we're looking at reinforcing stuff. We did notice that these bolts that were in there were dragging on the frame here and there. So we put shorter bolts in there. That took care of that problem. And we shifted this whole piece over like a 3/16 or so. So that helped out with alignment. This was dragging on the radiator support. But then also, we got these little cross braces. So we got one in there. The other one still needs to go in there. And then if we need to, we could loosen up some bolts and kind of shift this from left to right to try and brace it. But really the whole point of that is to keep it from wobbling like this. So now Ethan's working over here. This is just wire tied up there, literally with wire.
Yeah, perfect.
And then we're putting that together on there. So we actually have somewhat of a support. So it's working out pretty good. I think that just clears when that thing tips down. We can tip it down and double check. You want to?
Yeah, I want to make sure because I don't want to. That's hitting here.
So what if we go in towards the engine? Would that help?
If I could bring it up like that, yeah, that'll clear.
So basically get the filter as close to that rod as possible?
Yeah.
That was a good check.
I didn't want to fucking weld it all up and then have to redo it. I'll have to cut it off there.
Yeah, because then we can just shift this basically over as close as we can get it.
Yep, and then we can weld. Do you want to weld it or do you want to be able to remove this?
Well, I think since the bolts are all right there,
Okay.
you could just unbolt it off of that if you needed to.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I don't know that we need to fully weld it. We just do like a little 1/4-inch stitch on either side of it. Should be good.
I think so. I think that'll work. Might have to adjust that. That'll be good.
Well, those are some of the things we're working on. The other thing that we noticed is Ethan found these boots are all destroyed. So we got new upper ball joints. We got to get those installed. We've already got a hot mess going on the bench right here. Oh, we got brake lines that we're replacing and we didn't have the right brake line wrenches, so we made some. And then once we lift the truck back up, we want to get the tank back in there. We got to figure out the fuel lines. So I think that this line is long enough. I think this is the Earl's Vapor Guard stuff. Yeah, fuel injection hose that Dad dropped off. And then we got all this stuff. So we just basically set aside all the things that we need to install that were in the bed of the truck. With the exception of the wiring, because we're gonna let Dad do that part. So that's where we're at. All right, we were replacing the rear brake lines. And we took this line off of there. And this is what the flare looked like on it. So we reflared it and we did that. And we did it with this fancy pants tool that Dad left over here that we didn't know what we were doing. But you put these little blocks in here and you slide your tube in there, and then you've got your die with multiple different positions. And you just pull this lever to create a flare. That worked pretty good because look at this tiny little flare. I wasn't going to cut it. That worked out. So that's where we're at. We just did the front brake lines and the upper ball joints are up there. And now we're working on this back one. Figuring out what we got to do to try and get that brake line a little bit nicer. We've got more of these little guys that we could put on there.
Yeah,
I guess there's one.
If we can flatten this out to give us a little length back.
Yeah, I think we can. Well, we have a little curly Q up here too. So if we really needed to, we can pull it forward. But that's what we're working on right now. All right. Holy cow, that's bright. It's day 2 of our 4-day marathon of working on Hillbilly Express. Mike's 55, 53, 54. We don't know really what year it is because it's all of those years. Anyways, I gotta drain all the fresh oil out of it and reseal that. But also the rear main is leaking, it looks like. So we might just ignore that. Oh, and it looks like this is leaking too. So we need to put a new seal there, probably put a new seal there, and then take that apart, clean it up, re-silicone it, put it together, let it sit, and then put the oil in there. This is how much it dripped just overnight. So that's no bueno. It's not gonna fix itself, unfortunately. But that's what I'm gonna start on. Ethan's not here yet. Dad, I didn't hear anything from him. He wasn't feeling good yesterday. And Nate said he might show up, so it's cool. We got a whole bunch of people to help. I'm gonna update the list. We found some new things that we gotta fix. I'm gonna update this and get started. Okay, we were looking at some stuff on the rear. We're trying to figure out why these brake lines look like they're kind of kinked. Right there and right there. So, we got creative and we took the springs off of the coilovers so that we can go full compression and full droop. And we found out that with this mounted the way that it was, that about 3 inches shy of the suspension being at full compression, it would just shear the brake lines clean off. So that's good. Yeah. So now what we're doing is we made these little spacers that are just active as the spring diameter, but if it's in full compression. So we just did that so that we can compress the suspension and see if the springs collide with the frame, which we suspect they will. And then we can figure out what we got to do to fix that. And we think we figured out for the brake line, if we just cut half of this bracket off. Oh, we're gonna have to be careful doing.
Yeah, that's I'm worried is it's gonna get.
That spring is just right there in the way. Okay, that's where we're at. Making progress, going backwards. Custom patented PVC coil springs. Pretty badass.
It's like a Bluetooth kind of version. Oh yeah, we got half an inch on this side, easy.
So this one's not in the pocket all the way. So here's our next problem. This cup will clear the angle iron. See that gap? Look at this one. You can't even get it in there. Biscuits!
But even so, if that's as much as we can compress, look, it'll shear the brakes right off. Yeah. You're up here.
So I think our spring clearance is good. This, we might just have to take this and just take a freaking, yeah, take the grinder and just notch that out as much as.
Marker while it's there.
Yeah, we might as well mark that. Because it won't even saddle in there. Yeah. I mean, it wants to, but. All right, so with our PVC in there, we got clearance on full compression. Pretty much full compression. I mean, it's like, it's right there. We can go up a tiny bit more, I guess. That one might be compressed all the way. Yeah. So that's like, this is touching the frame over here already. But we've got, I mean, it's barely there, but we have clearance. So that's good. At least that's not a problem. Yeah. Okay, on to the brake lines. Okay, so this used to go right here above the axle, and we compressed the suspension, and we found out that this crashed into the frame. So what I did is I cut that bracket off, and I'm going to weld it right there, so that the line will be right here, nice and easily accessible, and you can go over here, and then we'll just make Dad make new brake lines, because that seems like that's the easiest route, is to have Dad do something. So that's good.
So do you want him to work on these, and we can work on maybe the gas tank while they work on that, or vice versa?
Yeah, we can do somebody on the brake lines and then gas tank.
Oh, somebody's jacket just fell. That's me. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so we moved the brake lines here. So now we got to replumb from right there to that block. We cycled the suspension, so we made sure this doesn't hit anything. So I think we're good there. So we got to make new lines from right to left to the center on that. And then the next thing we got to do is we got to put the gas tank back in. So that's going to be fun. because these bolts are horrible. So that's where we're at right now. We're making progress. And we ran into the store and grabbed lunch, and that was like 2 hours. So that's, you know, fine. Things are happening. Ethan's making noise up here. Nate's being really quiet, so Ethan's counteracting that. We got the gas tank back in there. We're working on the running board. We're trying to line some stuff. So since we had to take this off and cut it and re-weld it, it's tweaked a little bit. So we gotta pull this bracket towards the front of the truck because we don't want it to be buried into the fiberglass fender or we'll break it. And we don't want that. Mike would not be happy. And Dad's making fuel lines.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out, this didn't want to go through there, and this little bearing has...
The detent?
Yeah, is not... So I have to take this fell out so the pin wouldn't go through, and that's supposed to retain that inside there.
Oh, interesting.
Because first I was wondering why that came out on me, and I'm like, what the hell?
So now you got to fix the tool before you can fix the truck? That's where we're at. We're breaking stuff. Okay, we're done for today. We essentially made it so the truck can't even sit down on its own weight anymore. We're redoing this parallel bar for the 4-link because, well, it wasn't going to work. And then we're going to pull the axles out. We got to pull this out and reseal it because it's leaking everywhere. But Dad got some more stuff done up here. He got the brake switch in there, which is right there. And he started putting the steering column back together. It looks like he peed in here a little bit. Looks good. There's access to the tank and to our new lines that we put in there. So it's coming together. Okay, here's where we're at. We got the Panhard bar kind of tacked in place. So what I want to do is cycle the suspension. So right now it's at full droop. So that is dictated by the shocks. So the good thing in full droop is this brake line is not all stretched out for the middle. So that's nice. So then what I want to do is move this jack over from one side to the other and basically tilt it completely up just to make sure that nothing gets into a weird bind and this travels good. So this is what we redid on this bracket. We extended it out and then we moved this out a little bit. And then this one we remade. So now I think what we got to do is we got to take this and move it to here and see if we can just, so that it's articulated the most that it can be, just see what happens. See what happens, because when we're driving this thing, it's gonna max itself out at some point, right?
Yeah. Shit's ooh.
What was that?
Something over here. I don't know what, but it's something over here.
I mean, that's buried pretty good.
Oh yeah.
It's touching the frame now, right there.
I like that.
And then that's full droop. Which that is probably shorter than it can go with those springs. I don't know if those springs can compress that much because you've got to have that thing in there all the way to here. Oh, I forgot we got to grind that out.
Ooh, yep.
Okay, so that's good for that side, and lower it down and do the other side just to make sure. So then that is touching the frame right there. Basically the same thing as the other side. And I mean, if it ever went up that far anyways, that tire would be so buried into some stuff.
Oh, it destroyed it. I think
That's why I almost wonder if we put the tires on there and do that to see what that hits, because that might dictate if we need to have some bump stops.
yeah. But I think we got this figured out. I think this is where we want it.
Yeah, I think we can weld that out. And then before we put these back together with springs on there, I think we put the wheels and everything back on there.
Remember to do that.
And flex it, yeah.
Yeah, because it won't flex like this. There's no way. That tire will be up in the fender.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is we might have to put some sort of a bump stop on the bottom of the axle, which would be nice because if you have a bump stop on the bottom or a bottom of the frame so that the axle hits it, then no metal will hit anything.
There's a hole there. Like it probably had one at one time.
Yeah. So we might be able to do something.
You know, I think I have some at the house. I don't know why.
That freaking rock crawling suspension
There
flex.
we go. Nothing's in a bind.
Heck yes. We're professional four-linker guys.
Four linkers.
Voila! We're done. With the fan hard bars in there, everything's back together. And we resealed the diff because it was leaking all over the place. So we got that resealed. We gotta wait for a little bit. We should probably write down fill rear diff on that list because there's no oil in it.
Fill it now that we're...
Yeah, but we're gonna let that silicone sit.
Oh, yeah.
So brake lines are on there, everything's good. We articulated it, and we think we're good. So now we're lowering it down to the ground. That's what we're doing now. We have the steering wheel in there. It doesn't have a horn. Don't judge us, we don't care. That's about the only thing we did in the last couple hours is got the stupid steering wheel on there. And Dad's gonna put fuel in it. This is the first time the fuel tank has got fuel in it. And then we're gonna see
So we
if
should...
it runs.
Let's see, there's about a quart in there. It should be leaking by now.
Yeah, it's leaking out of the top of that.
Oh, we gotta tighten the lid.
That's probably because that thing doesn't seal very good. Here's our next thing. So the bumper's supposed to go on like that. And look at that gap. That's just...
You could lose a whole six-pack in there.
That's too much. So what we're looking at is we're looking at cutting off this front section so the bumper could actually sit back like that. But we have to make sure that there's enough clearance for our hinges for our front tilt. So those are right there. That looks like the way that that's in towards that looks so much better.
Oh man, yeah. I like that a lot.
Especially 4 inches spaced off to the passenger side.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You only look from the driver's side.
So we're gonna cut 3 inches off the frame horns and then go from there. Okay, we got serious. We cut these off the front. So the bumper sits back 3 inches further. Now the issue is when you tilt the front up, these get into the bumper. So we've got to notch this out. And Ethan had the genius idea. If we mark that right there and drill a hole, then we'll have a nice radius cut at the end. So he's a fucking smarty pants.
Here's this wire that goes to nothing that says IGN on it.
I leave Dad alone for 2 seconds and the gauges are on the floor.
It should still start too.
Where's this little screw go to? Oh, there's a couple little screws.
Well, that's the ground and the hot
Oh, okay. For this
feed
little terminal block.
for the gauges. Because that was the last two that were holding stuff in there.
So we're gonna clean this up basically is the plan because this is kind of
up and put a couple plugs on it.
it'll be easier if you ever got to take it out.
Yeah. And then like all those ones that are dangling there were not hooked up to anything.
Interesting.
Which they're turn signal lights, high beam lights, and that kind of stuff.
So our painless kit should take care of a lot of
A
that.
lot of it.
And that's here. So Dad's doing the exact same thing me and Ethan were doing yesterday. He's just going backwards, taking things apart.
Because now I want to see with that.
Oh, we got a new lens on there and it is crispy clean. Anyways, here's what we got done yesterday. Have a little recap. I don't know what we got done. I'm losing track of the days here. Oh, okay. We got the steering wheel on there. Our universal horn kit will not work with that, but at least the steering wheel's on there. We'll have to figure out the horn stuff. Dad ripped the gauge cluster out because there's a bunch of wiring that's in this painless kit that ties in for like dash lights and stuff. So what we're going to do is clean up a bunch of this old stuff that's in here so that we can integrate as much of that painless wiring, because it's all labeled wires and stuff. It'll be easier to troubleshoot in the future. And we started marking off a bunch of these different wires that are on this little panel that they've got. So we're going through wire by wire. There's a bunch of wires that were terminated here but weren't terminated over there, and ones that weren't terminated over there but were terminated here. We had maybe like 10 wires that were 12 volt hot as soon as the key was turned on, but they didn't go to anything, and a couple of them were really close to metal so that they could arc out. They didn't arc out, but they could. So we were trying to eliminate a bunch of unused stuff first so that we can figure out exactly what we want to do with this new harness, where we got to mount that fuse block and all that. We got the fuse tank in there. So here's the cinder unit. We got to run a new ground for that. There's a screwdriver that we lost. We got this is the send and this is the return for fuel. So this has got a pickup that goes to the bottom of the tank. We put 5 gallons in there and it does pick it up. So that's a 17 gallon or 18 gallon tank. So before, remember, we had 14 gallons in there and it wouldn't pick up any fuel because the old tank pickup tube was rotted out. All right. Ethan got the little reinforcement deals on the front hinges, so that stiffened up the front a lot. So now this side to side movement is way less than it was.
Okay, it's twisting the frame.
So that's
nice.
good.
Better.
And then we did a professional paint job, 0 runs on the whole front of this, and we used nail polish on this. Just to try and get the bare metal covered. So we're gonna let that sit. We're gonna figure out the next thing is these are the little hanger deals for holding the front clip down. So we're gonna come up with something for that and maybe put foam tape on this or maybe on that side so when you tilt it down it doesn't rattle. That's what we're looking at right now. Ta-da! We got a front bumper on there. It looks nice. We ended up shortening the frame horns by a little over 3 inches. So that's cool. We got these bolts for our hood hold down. They're a little more decorative. That's what goes here and here on both sides. So there's 4 of them. We stiffened up this whole front tilt. So before you used to be able to do this and the whole thing would shake. Now it's pretty stable. So we got these little reinforcements on the hinges there. And we did the X-brace. So it's fully adjustable. So you can tilt it from one side to the other if you need to for alignment on stuff. So that's good. That's the whole front stuff that we did. Oh, and we did this bracket here. That's our hanger for the mass airflow. We didn't make it as far on wiring as we were hoping, but we did make a mess. That's how you know you're making progress. So we're trying to find all of the wires that weren't hooked up to anything, all of the wires that are factory versus the aftermarket ones, and then a bunch of rogue butt connectors that we want to try and clean up as many as possible. We want to try and have 0 fires, so that's what we're gonna go for. We got the gas tank in there and hooked up, and we tested it and it runs and it doesn't leak. And then the rear, this is where we did the majority of the work. So we did some reinforcement of this here. The issue was it was only tied to the bottom of the frame before, so then when there was a lot of load on it, it was kind of tweaking this just a little bit. So we did a fish plate deal over here, kind of rebuilt this mount. And then this mount here, we redid this too. So this was laying down before, but it was getting the Heim into a bind when they were at full droop. So we got both of the Heims lined up so they can travel together without getting into any binds. And we took the whole axle apart. We got everything cleaned up. It was leaking right here. So we took that apart, got that all re-gooped up, and then refilled it. There's all of the brake lines on the rear axle are new because we moved the lines here. We cycled the suspension travel. The lines were mounted up here and they went above the axle tube. The issue with that is when you would cycle the suspension, the brake line would hit right here. So we didn't like that. So we redid that. But anywho, that's what we did. Not a whole lot of video. We were working a lot. I forgot to record most of it, to be honest, but we were just working, getting things done. I just did a few different recaps so that I could show you. So there you go. Oh yeah, and then happy Christmas and Merry New Year and all those things.